going to turn on the recording because I don't want to miss a second of this. So welcome everybody to this week's Millcraft Meetup. I'm so excited you could join us. I know I'm not alone in saying that the team at Millcraft is really excited to have our guest host today. Welcome Evelio Mattos. He is a creative director in the luxury packaging space. And you guys, I have to say, he is kind of like the thought leader in the space. I've been a big fan for a number of years now, and I have to say, his work, I know you may not know the name, but I would tell you, look him up on LinkedIn. His work is extraordinary. He worked with brands like Ted Baker, Capri, Tiffany, Cricut, Google, Dell, and a bunch more. What I love about Evelio's approach is a paper geek. He focuses on craftsmanship and the consumer experience as opposed to, making pretty boxes, which I think is, awesome. And just to give him a little shout out here from his bio, his recent achievements include several placements in the Die Top 100 of 2019. And he also established a packaging design company or agency within a Fortune 500 company, which is incredibly cool. So Evelio's joining us from Scottsdale, Arizona. Welcome and thank you for joining us at the meetup. We are excited to have you and to learn more about packaging, the cues to packaging, and have you share your insights with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. And thank you guys for showing up. I'm like, nobody's going to show up to this. And I have all these beautiful faces. So it's great, guys. Thank you. So like Jill said, I've been in packaging for almost 20 years, mostly focused on luxury brands. And I've had the great opportunity to do a lot of tech stuff, product packaging, retail packaging, and not knowing everybody's background, I kind of wanted to do just a quick run through of some stuff. And, we're going to go over top 10 luxury cues. But before we do that, right, it's like, who's this guy that we're talking to? So again, my name is Evelio Mattos, creative director of packaging. And really what that means is I've built teams, I work with teams, and really push the consumer experience over just the design and try to bring together all the different aspects of packaging from concept, design, structure, engineering, testing, manufacturing, and bring all those people under one roof. And of course, procurement. Procurement's a team I always love to bring into the process because they hold the checkbook. So we want to make sure that they're part of the process. So having done that for as many years as I have, it's just been a great opportunity to meet a lot of people, work with a lot of different brands, and from every encounter, there's always something that we can definitely learn. So just in terms of where it is that I fit in, I gotta fit between all these little niches, right? Between the design and the engineering. For whatever reason, there's the engineers, the packaging engineers that can build a box that you can drop from a roof and the product is perfect. And then you've got the designers that can make things beautiful and strategically design them to create consumer experiences. So I bridge that gap. And I love being in that space. One, because I don't have to do the visual design, and two, because I don't have to do the engineering. I can just bring those people together and we can create something magical together. Then on the manufacturing side, I've spent so much time in manufacturing, either working with retooling equipment, reconfiguring equipment, production equipment for different machines in Asia, in the US, and being able to take that concept and make it a reality. Again, I love the manufacturing side of it because I don't have to do it, but I can be a part of it, and being able to bring all of that in one space is really kind of my niche. So I have had a chance to work with a few brands. Of course, most of them all have NDAs, so I've had to blur them out. You can't tell who these guys are. But just in tech and product, retail, luxury, a lot of startups, having a really good time with a lot of startups. I've learned a lot from how startups operate and what it is that they're looking for. I know we kind of talk to startups, and there's always that conversation we have about minimums, which we'll kind of dive into as well. I've done a lot of work with the Die Line, which is the Die Line packaging blog. If you're not familiar with it, definitely take a look at it. It's thedieline.com. I've done presentations with them. We've done classes. So this is a snapshot from my sketching class, which just teaches people how to sketch packaging and how to present it to customers. Then what's great about packaging is that you're able to create all these different experiences. By doing a lot of sketching, my sketch work, what happens is clients start going, hey, can you, I know you're doing packaging, but we've got a display. Can you create a display for us? Can you create a pop-up structure? And you're able to just quickly ideate those ideas and put them together in sketch form, show that as just really quick concepts. And I really push for, and I'm touching my face here a lot. I know we're not supposed to, but I really push teams to focus on sketching versus jumping into the computer and building CAD models, building prototypes. And the benefit to sketching is when you're sitting across at the table from either a designer, a procurement person, is that you can share your ideas, and in sketch form, they don't have a problem coming to you and saying, I don't like the way that box is opening. I don't, can we try a different form factor? They all of a sudden become part of that process where they're pitching in their ideas. And it's especially helpful when you're working with procurement because they're typically not brought into the design process. So when you're working with the procurement teams, the buyers, showing them your early ideas and letting them give you their opinion on the design, all of a sudden makes that design concept, makes them an owner of that design. And they're more willing to fight for every dollar to get that idea that they're a part of to be a reality, versus coming to them and saying, this is the final design, and showing them a 3D CAD that looks almost lifelike. Because at that point, when they see something that's so finished, there's not a lot of opportunity for them to create this wiggle room and say, I don't like that texture, or I don't like this, because they don't know who's approved it thus far. And in early sketch, it's really something that's super beneficial. Something I definitely push for teams. About 6 years ago, I released this article on the Die Line called Top 10 Luxury Packaging Cues. And it was, just all my notes over the years that I'd kind of taken down, working with different brands and seeing the different trends that were bubbling up. After launching that article just took off. And, it's been pretty long lasting because Jill reached out to me. She goes, hey, you wrote that article. I'd love to have you on to talk about it. And it was funny enough because I've been recently, just with not just COVID-19, but just all of the other changes that are going on in the world. I'd gone back and sort of revisited this and said, a lot of this stuff is BS now. It doesn't necessarily make sense anymore. So the article had these 10 things that were really important at the time, which were packaging interaction, creating these layered unveilings. So when you open up a box, there would be some kind of a welcoming message on a separate panel that you removed, and it was creating all of this romance and a lot of waste. But at the time, nobody had really jumped into packaging, and packaging had just been regular boxes. And it was only the luxury brands that were doing anything really, really unique. So this was a good way for smaller brands to start pulling ideas that made sense for them. So we started seeing a lot of brands that, you'd open up the box and there'd be a welcome message, and you remove that welcome message, and then maybe you'd see the quick start guide, or you'd see the product. And it was just different ways of hiding the product and creating this anticipation, which was awesome. But after a while, things just get tired. We also talked about the sound of the packaging, which was, if you had a lightweight paper, like a tissue paper, or you had a cello wrap on a product, just the sound of a quality paper is typically a deeper sound. It's heavier. It just creates this sense of value that a tissue paper or a cello wrap doesn't, right? And we all buy, we've all been that kid that has bought the bazooka gun that comes in that really thin paper and it just has that sound, or like the crinkle that comes on a pack of cigarettes. All those sounds create these memories for us, and they're not necessarily the most luxurious ones. So having something that counter to that would definitely elevate packaging. Olfactive, for those of you that work in factory, in manufacturing, have been to factories in Asia, those smells, on press, those smells, they're not the greatest, but we love them. And, making sure that those smells don't come across in your packaging. There's so many different ways that we can do that, and so many different things that manufacturers are able to do. So as designers, making sure that we're not only producing something and designing something, but looking at all those details and making sure that the product doesn't smell of production, making sure that they're using the appropriate inks and the right glues, those types of things. And it's extremely important. Then, haptics, just the way that you hold a product. When we look at our phones, they're perfectly shaped, and, we fiddle with them, we flip them around, making sure that packs were the right size. And when we opened them, that if there was an interaction that happened, that it was seamless. Tactility, materials, weight, textures, inks, finishes, all of those different types of things were extremely important at that point. Not saying that they're less important today, but these were the things that really made sense. Closures, we looked at a lot of magnets, a lot of ribbon, a lot of excess, just this ostentatious package, that you would have to dig into and create this user experience. We wanted to slow down the unboxing to make it memorable. Contrast finishes, textures with grip, then like a smooth or a foil, something that would definitely create some contrast there. Heritage, just going back to the origin of the brand, what the brand meant, what they were trying to say, and saying that in packaging. Anticipation, in that article, that was a really fun one, because I used a clip from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. So when you click anticipation, there's a point where the main character says half of the word and then just waits, and everybody's just on the edge of their seat for him to finish the word. But that's what we wanted to create in packaging. We wanted to create this moment where you just can't wait to get into the product and see it as a gift. But again, there was a lot of waste with that. And then quality control. Quality is something that never goes away. Again, as designers, typically we design something and then we release it into the world. A lot of times designers if the pack doesn't look exactly how you designed it, it's, the manufacturer didn't listen to me. The manufacturer didn't know how to do this. So part of that article was really creating an opportunity for designers to be able to speak to the manufacturers and learn, all the different manufacturing processes, and become aware enough of the processes and to be confident enough to ask questions, because as designers, we don't know a lot of the details that go into production. We just assume that, we design something and then we can yell and scream at the manufacturer and they'll just do it. But it's really this team mentality. So we really wanted to create that. But before we're going to dive into that, I know there's a lot of people on here, not really sure. So before we dive into today's top 10 and how that has changed, there's a lot of people on the call, and I'm not really sure everybody's packaging background. So I want to just do a quick recap of what packaging is. It's product protection, product presentation. There's packaging from, e-com, product packaging. We've got, clamshells, the packaging inside of e-commerce packaging. these seeding campaigns, so these marketing components, these compartmentalized boxes that create this experience. We've got tech boxes, and then a lot of the dropship type stuff that we get now, the D2C. We've also got shopping bags. Some people don't consider bags packaging, some people do. I know for me, I consider it packaging for sure. So we've got like retail packaging, again, e-commerce packaging, and the decisions behind why different brands use different things. For e-com, it's just a matter of distribution centers, speed, efficiency, cost, and these are all things that are important for designers to know about. So when you're working with a designer, if you're on the manufacturing side or the distribution side, it's always great to invite them in to learn what it is that it takes to actually get that pack out, so they can make better decisions as designers. Tote bags, pouches, all these different things. So bags and paper and poly and these mixed materials, all of this is packaging. And I know a lot of us know this, but when you see the extent and the broadness of packaging, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome that we work in this industry. So bottles, canisters, everything from aerosols to beer bottles. I love the Grolsch bottle. It's one of those things that you keep. Fragrance bottles. I do have a podcast that I just started called Package Design Unboxed, and I released my first episode this week. My follow-up episode on Monday is with Vincent Villager, and he was the creative director at Burberry. And we talk about the Burberry, the bottles and the fragrance packaging. And one of the things that he says is, his background wasn't packaging. He didn't go to a packaging school. He didn't go to a graphic design school. He was an industrial designer. It was more on the product side. So those types of designers look at primary packaging or product packaging as product development. So they don't see it separate from the fragrance. And that's kind of a great way to look at it too, is like the Grolsch bottle. It's not just packaging. We have to look at it as, yes, it has to protect the product and display the product, but it's an experience. It's how somebody holds it, how it fits in their hands, all the ergonomics around it, and making that product enticing enough for someone to purchase. So it's really an interesting take on it, in that packaging is product versus packaging is just this afterthought that comes at the end, after product's been developed. Packaging has all these accessories also. So tape is part of it. Hang tags, we've got receipt holders, those gift card carriers, labels, ribbons. There's so many different things, and so many different brands out there with different paper mills, different plastic companies, tape companies. All these different things play a role in packaging. So it's just really important that we all, when we design packaging, consider the entire process. And if I'm hired to design a shopping bag, before I even start on the bag, I want to know the size of the product mix. I go into the stores, I look at all the products, I look at what kind of orders they're taking on the e-com side. What are the top 10 products that they're using, that they're selling? I size that out. And then if that's going into a box, what are the sizes of the boxes they're using? Figuring out the right size of packaging through the entire system. How are they using labels? Where are those pieces going? Are they using tissue? Is there tape? All going through and asking all of those questions before I even get to designing the bag or the product. Because again, there's so many different components to packaging, and on the procurement side, the brand side, they don't always consider how designing one piece can affect the entire chain of product. So without further ado, the top 10 needs of luxury packaging for 2020. So people are looking for an honest unboxing. It's really about simplicity today, where when you open the box, we're not looking for this layered, drawn out experience. consumers are really looking for an honest presentation. When I open up my box, I want to see my product right away. I didn't buy it because of the packaging. I bought it because of the product, and we want to present the product in that manner. Sonos is a great example of that. The team at Sonos has been creating this packaging where they're peeling away more and more packaging. They're focusing on monomaterials. The inset on the lid when you open that box, the curvature of it fits the product perfectly, but it also has the branding on there. And it's not in a way that draws your eye away from the product. Everything is there to focus you on the product. And then secondarily, you'll see the logo. Below that, there's some messaging. You'll have your quick start guide. And they've created a system, they've created a system that's really simple for fulfillment. It's extremely easy for consumers to recycle, but it also gives them flexibility. So if the product changes, if anything needs to be adjusted, they've created just this sleeve system that is an inexpensive way to update information. It's an inexpensive way to create international versions of the packaging, because the main pack and the system inside of it is self-contained, and all you're doing is swapping out that sleeve. So it's just a really smart way to view packaging, and it's a manner that brands are moving. One thing I asked on my podcast recently was, we all walk into a brand, we all walk into agencies, and they all say, I love the Apple packaging. I love how you open the box and it's like a 6-second drop, and then the product's revealed. I love how that box feels, but I don't know about you, but I didn't buy my iPhone because of the packaging. So that packaging isn't really selling me anything. We're all geeking out about it because we're in packaging. But if you're not in packaging, that box is just a box, and it doesn't necessarily sell the product. So having that mindset that the packaging in some of these instances isn't selling the product, it's just there to present it in a more honest fashion, I think is really important. Purity in materials is really, is just another conversation that's happening at the moment. We want to know what the pack is made of, whether, we're doing molded fibers, if we're doing papers with different finishes on it, we want to know, is that recyclable? We want to know as consumers what that material actually is. I know with Mohawk just released they just did their Earth Day release with some new materials, were pretty cool. Some cotton materials and some hemp stuff, some straw stuff. The straw paper is just really beautiful in that you can see the texture, and I think just letting the materials speak for itself, I think, is really important, and creating a way that you're not hiding the material behind print and process, but making that part of the brand. Brands are really looking for something they can own, and I think that materials is really important. This ownable touch is another piece that's really critical at this point, where people are looking for less packaging and less noise on their packaging. We want to be able to grab a box and know that it's this brand just from the feel of it, just from the texture of it. So with Burberry, they spent years developing a texture that matched the gabardine fabric of their trench coats, and finding the right mix of fibers that they could hit with such a deep emboss, such a deep texture, that the fibers wouldn't crack. It would remain strong enough. They'd be able to do it at the appropriate weight. And today, their texture, if you were to hold both their shopping bag and their trench coat, is almost identical. And I think that that's a big part of that brand. And a lot of brands try to achieve something like that, but it's a lot of times it's a matter of time and money. So being able to have that conversation with brands up front and the importance of creating an ownable touch is important. And, we're seeing a lot of contrast over color. Again, it's about less noise on the pack. And for luxury products, you're going to have you'll see a lot more of this. Obviously down market, packaging gets a little bit noisier. One of the boxes I reviewed not too long ago was from a company called Smartish that they do phone cases. There's like a $10 phone case, and the box is like a 50-cent box, but it is like the coolest box. And I'm just seeing if I do have it available here. It's like the coolest box because it's just a tuck box, and it has a little flap that sticks out, but when you lift the tuck, it actually lifts up the insert that's holding your phone case. And the packaging through it is just the branding on it is really smart. The structure is really simple, but it works flawlessly. It's an easy to fulfill product. But from a consumer side, when you're opening it, there were a few times where, I just kind of chuckled through it because it was, they have these little sayings on there that are just goofy, and they're like, they get it. It's a $10 product in a cheap box, but we're going to have fun doing it. So it had a lot of graphics. It had a lot of color to it. And it was really just a smart way to do packaging. But as we work our way up in the luxury space, and we're seeing a lot less. We're seeing a lot more about contrast. We're looking at materials, embossing, and this is something that I see happening more frequently now, especially with COVID. And the reason for that is the last downturn that we had after the bank crisis. A lot of the brands in the luxury space reduced the size of their logos. They simplified their packaging. And the idea and the thought behind that was, people were losing their homes, people were losing their jobs, and they didn't want you walking down the street with this big billboard saying, "I'm sorry that you lost your job, but I just bought myself a $1,000 purse." It was about just being a little bit more subtle in the way that we lived our lives. In this case, with COVID, it's a lot more drastic in that, people are losing their jobs, people are losing their lives, their loved ones. We don't want to walk around with some big flashy thing that we just purchased. A lot of us are purchasing things on e-com, so it's just more of a subtle, honest conversation that's happening between brands and consumers. So it's just something that I definitely see happening more frequently. Then innovation, not gimmicks. And in the past, I've been responsible for a lot of gimmicky packaging, where you open something and it does something, it creates like a pop-up, or it creates some goofy experience that happens, and it's been a lot of fun to do that, and it made a lot of sense for the brands at the time. But today, when brands talk about innovation, they're not looking for some crazy unfolding, some crazy unboxing. They're looking for innovation within their supply chain. How can we reduce the number of boxes that we're doing? If we're shipping product from Asia to the US and we're doing this repeatedly, can we create some kind of a system where we don't have to use corrugate that we've got to then tear apart and recycle? Can we create a racking system for products to then ship back and forth? Can we create different ways to reduce our carbon footprint? They're always looking for different things. So with Loop, if you guys are familiar, Tom Zaki launched Loop from TerraCycle, which is a system that you buy your products, you buy your Cascade, it comes in this tin. When you're done with it, they pick it up and then they refill it, and it's just reusable packaging. And it's all materials that can be recycled and repurposed. So just really smart ways of creating new innovation for the brands. Conversation around monomaterial is really big at the moment. People are starting to realize that they can't recycle everything. It's more, before COVID, there was a lot of discussion on sustainability, plastics, and packaging that's laminated with plastics that are combined with other materials. yes, we can put recycle symbols on there. Yes, we can put the number 7, the number 35, whatever we want to add to it, however many materials or how many numbers we want to keep going up to. Um, but really, people only recycle the first 3, you know, um, especially now with the petroleum, the oil prices going down. Plastic is pretty much worthless. Um, it's not being recycled as often. Um, so corrugate, keeping it paper, keeping it fiber-based is really important. If you're in plastics, finding out ways that we can help simplify the waste stream, teaching, creating ways that we can teach consumers how to separate products and packaging so that plastics can be recycled more efficiently. Um, providing a lot of education to consumers is extremely important. This pretty much says it. A lot of water brands are going to cans. They're looking for aluminum. A lot of people are ditching plastic for fiber-based products. Consumers are aware of their ocean-bound plastics. The big stamps that say ocean-bound plastic, ocean plastic. Previously, consumers thought, "Oh, it's ocean-bound plastic." I've seen those pictures of the people, pulling in nets from on their boats and pulling in all this waste. And I've seen the birds with the plastic in their guts. That's where this plastic is coming from. And now people realize, no, that's not where it comes from. It's just, a landfill that's up the road from the beach or 30 miles from the beach. So we're going to get that plastic anyway. So people are starting to wake up to some of the marketing around some of these products. So just, again, it's just a matter of being honest, looking for new ways. And if we're doing plastic, plastic is important for supply chain. Plastic's important for a lot of products. But, how can we help the brands be honest about it? How to educate the consumers in, how to separate it, how to repurpose it. This isn't we can't use plastic. It's just a matter of incorporating that conversation, including that consumer in the conversation, and not trying to hide it. Storytelling is really big. A few years ago, a lot of designers were talking about they were storytellers, and people would kind of laugh at it and say, no, we're not storytellers, we're designers. But today, really, brands that are developing packaging shouldn't be developed in a silo. Packaging is part of a bigger story. All of the marketing that happens, all of the branding that happens, all of the conversations that happen offline. If I bought a product, like when I bought that Smartish, and somebody says, "Hey, what about your phone case?" They like my phone case for whatever reason. I'll tell them about the brand and I'll tell them about the packaging, and kind of what their story is. And I know what their story is from the packaging because they tell it so well on the pack. With Rory, it's a brand for menopausal women. It's not a topic that's in the media very often. But what they do is they do it in a way that is accessible and honest. Again, so with the packaging, it carries that same feeling. It's not bright and fun and young. It's not presented in an aged manner. It's just this honest materials presenting honest packaging. There's bottles with labels, and then just simply explaining how to separate all those pieces. And they do an amazing job of doing that. Alternative fibers, the t-shirt material, the cotton papers, letting the paper tell a story is something that we're going to see a lot more of. It's just really important. We see so much white craft paper coming from Asia. It all feels the same. A lot of brown craft paper. People are over that. People see it with their Amazon packaging. So what else can we do with paper? Mohawk's doing a killer job with some new materials. There's a lot of other paper companies doing different things as well. It's like, how do you create something that's tactile, honest, and feels like a piece of art, as well as something that I can easily toss into my recycle bin and feel confident that it's gonna be recycled. Because of COVID, we're looking at a lot of papers with different properties. So, in hospitals, in the medical field, you're seeing, people have, forms, papers, binders, folders, all sorts of paper that is antimicrobial. It's got some type of, it's got a silver coating on it, just different types of things that can fight viruses, that can be antibacterial, antimicrobial. I'm not 100% on the science behind it, so I'll just tell you that it's pretty cool stuff that's happening. But how can, considering how that affects packaging, where that can fit in, is it a real opportunity to do something interesting, or is it just one of these things that we start creating and not realizing the snowball that we create in terms of issues later on? I know from the recycling standpoint, there can be issues with that. Wastewater, there can be an issue with that as well. So just making smart decisions and really looking to the future. And that's it. I think that was 10. So if there's any questions, I'd love to hear about them. I don't know how we
got questions,
do
Evelio.
this.
Oh my God, do we have questions? So,
all right, how do we do that?
So I'm going to start with the ones in the chat box, but I'm going to encourage you guys, let's make this interactive, and I think we're all responsible. You can click on the little microphone and go off mute to ask your question, but then I'm going to ask that you remute. So one of the ones that came up, oh gosh, I'm going to find it in here, and I think I vaguely remember it as I'm scrolling because we got a lot of comments in here. In terms of manufacturing, when you talked about manufacturing, when Evelio talks about manufacturers, is he referring to the manufacturing / converter of the final packaging product, or the manufacturer of the material being used to make the packaging, such as paperboard?
Great question. Both. I think as designers, we need to be involved in the entire process. So if we're doing bespoke packaging, there's no reason that the designer can't work with the paper mill to design the paper for the brand. In fact, when I speak to Vincent Villager from his time at Burberry and developing those papers for Burberry, he was at the mill, checking the color, figuring out the entire process, and it's from a design side, it becomes something just really beautiful where you involve yourself in that process, and you work hand in hand with the craftsmen that are making the paper, that are creating this substrate, but then also with the manufacturers, the converters that are creating the packaging. I think it's important to, if you're a designer, get out there and work with these teams to understand what it is that they do, so that you can help them. By learning, you can then ask the right questions that help them get to where you need to be faster. And then also, if you're a converter or a manufacturer of paper, inviting the designers in to see your process so that they can also be smarter about how they work with you is really important.
And then, Luke, I'm trying to find your question, Luke. You can come off mute and ask it, Luke.
My question was about, when it comes to materials, are you seeing anything with people preferring domestic materials or still opting for like the cheapest possible option, so getting it imported from abroad, since typically that tends to be the cheaper option?
Yeah, it really depends. I know with working with clients, I'll figure out where their product's being made and where the packaging has to happen, and then make that part of the decision. So if the product is in Europe and the fulfillment's happening in Europe, then trying to find what makes the most sense there. If it's happening here in the US, if it's, we don't make a lot of products here, but if we're making something here that requires molded fiber, then, probably looking at importing something just because of costs. Especially if you're working with startups, that becomes an issue. But it just really ranges. And I think just finding out what makes the most sense for the brand. Well, what is really great is that, you know, in Asia and Europe, there are suppliers of our domestic brands, paper. So I think just, you know, finding what makes the most sense for them and not pushing cost, right? Even though I know the clients are always going to say, well, you know, if we go over here, we can save 10 cents. It's like, yeah, okay, but what are we trading out? You know, look at your carbon footprint, you're increasing, look at all these different things and just giving them the real picture.
Evelio, expanding on that point, in terms of communicating with brands, because it is a difficult conversation. Sometimes, I shouldn't say difficult, it's challenging to, and you hit on it before, especially when procurements, you know, got the final say so. So I took notes and I loved that part about the sketches and bringing them in earlier and making them a part of the process so they buy in. I'm going to assume you find that they're less resistant to this maybe later conversation when you talk about materials and cost, and getting them to understand that, you know, the cheapest option isn't necessarily the best option or most effective for them. I don't know if you can expand a little bit more about ways to kind of overcome that when you're in those client meetings, because I think it is challenging for a lot of creatives and even people like myself to, you know, try to overcome. It's always coming back to, you know, cost and then, well, timeline, but I get that part.
Yeah, so just like with the sketches and bringing them into the process, it's the same thing with materials. You know, showing them samples of different things, you know, whether it's just hand wrapped on something and telling them, not just showing them and being like, hey, feel this, feel that. It's kind of the story behind it. And even showing them the cheaper option and saying, you know, this is the less expensive option. Here are ways that we can elevate it, whether it's adding a texture or adding a finish to it. But you can look at this material here and it's going to give your customer a more, you know, it's going to give them a more honest experience from the touch and the way that it wraps, and romancing it, right? And just stepping back and realizing that procurement person, that procurement team, they've got bosses and those bosses have bosses, and just figuring out what it is that they're really trying to get to. You know, sometimes it is the cheapest thing, but what's the story that you can share with them that they can sell up? Yes, we can spend 2 more cents for this material, but it's going to allow us to put, you know, an FSC label on it. It's going to allow us to be 100% recyclable. It's going to have some PCW in it, and being able to give them all of those notes that they're able to easily sell up. You know, we all want to be romanced. We all want to be sold. So it's doing that. And I know it's difficult for designers sometimes to sell themselves and to sell the ideas, but if you kind of look at it as you're just arming that person with the information to sell you up, it makes it a lot easier, and giving them the tools. So giving them the samples and writing on those samples, you know, this is, you know, 10 cents, but it doesn't do this, this, and this, right? And giving them enough doubt in this area, and then giving them enough positives on the other materials. It really makes a difference.
That's awesome, super helpful. And I guess I'm gonna put you on the spot, and obviously as a paper merchant, and we sell so much more than just paper materials. One of the services that we provide for our customers, commercial printers, creatives, and I'm curious if you have accessibility in your market. We have a design center where we do full-scale mock-ups. So, I mean, most of it tends to be on the commercial print side, but we do some comps as it relates to packaging, probably more box wraps or things that, you know, obviously we aren't structural engineers. But how important, I mean, I think I know the importance, are the samples, and do you work with your, I'm just curious, how you include that in your process, and do you find samples to be accessible to you?
Yeah, so so my process goes those really rough sketches. We'll do, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 different directions, narrow those down, and typically we end up combining ideas. Then from there, I'll build. I'm just looking to see if I had any prototypes around here. I'll build some hand mock-ups, which are super rough. I had them the other day, which was, I had like 8.5 by 11 sheet that I cut with some scissors and taped together, and it was really, really rough. But it was enough to go, show in a video conference, like, this is what happens. So it's really easy for whoever it is that you're working with to see how a box functions. So those rough prototypes are really important. And then from there, going to a more, a higher fidelity sample would be, working with somebody like you or a sample house, manufacturer, and getting unprinted samples that are true to material, true to size, and are testable. So it's really important to have those samples, but then also providing the pricing along the way with those samples and saying, as we work through these, we realized we needed to do X, right? We needed to, strengthen the board. We needed to change the wrap, and having that honest conversation and saying, so pricing went from here to here, and not being afraid of those conversations where you're just kind of hiding the information, and then all of a sudden it bubbles up and it explodes in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely have experienced that, but you learn and you're dead on. And all right, I'm reading one more off the chat, then I want you guys to come off mute. So Nan is asking, I feel like there has been more investment from brands on the unboxing experience / packaging as more and more retailers focus online versus in-store design touch points. Do you feel that will continue to build, especially given the current environment, or will you see a renewed investment by retailers to attract people to a brick and mortar retail? Or do you feel this is a bit of a tipping point now?
Yeah, that's a great one. I don't know. I would love to know, So I kind of, I'm moving ahead just on gut that people are going to go back to stores. Half the people are going to go back to stores. Half the people are going to stay home and order online. So we really have to create a seamless experience at either. So if I bought some products not too long ago and it just showed up in a ratty old box, and I'm sure the same box that it shipped from Asia in. But as a package designer, you're like, you just don't care sometimes. But as a consumer, you look at that ratty box and you're wondering, did this survive it? Did my product survive properly? I can see the made in China on the outside of it. I can see, some of the import information on the outside of the box. So obviously I went across the entire planet to get here. And it makes you question your product that you just purchased. And that's never a good thing. You never want the consumer to question whether that product inside is, safe, if it's clean, if it's damaged, or if you're going to find damage, if it's a tech product, if it's going to be damaged in 10 days, 20 days, and you got to return it. So it's really important to create that e-com experience that is tailored to the consumer, that validates the product, validates the purchase. So when you open it, if you spent $100 on it, $200, whatever it is, it feels like that product has been respected, it's been treated like it has the value that you purchased it with. Otherwise, brands will continue to see returns, and especially now, as people are buying more things online, I think more people will do more returns much easier since they're free returns.
Thanks. All right, you guys, don't be shy. This is your chance. Come off mute. If you're shy and want to type it in there, I'll relay it.
I'm just going to make a suggestion. If you would stop sharing your screen, we can just put all the people on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. There we are. If everybody wants to go to the gallery view. All right. Did we answer your question, Nan?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it.
I have a question. This is Cindy.
Yeah.
So you spoke about combining the experience between web and package design. Do you work directly in conjunction with web designers to help create that? And what has that experience been like for you?
I don't work with the web designers for the brands. Typically the brands have already invested their money in the web design, and because it's because web is so easy to change and update, and it, you know,
Right.
it's not instant gratification. Brands tend to spend a ton of money on web.
Right.
But what happens is when you're able to work with the brand and say, you know, this is my experience online. This is the beautiful photography that you have on there. This is how, you know, seamless the user experience is. And then you show them their packaging and say, there's a disconnect between these two, because this box is just a, you know, a corrugated RSC box with just some paper tape on it and a bunch of air cells in it. You know, it's not seamless and it doesn't represent what you have online. It allows you then to come in with new ideas for the packaging and show them, you know, these are other ideas that we can create that tie back to that beautiful online experience.
That's interesting. So you're often coming at the project after the website's been.
Yes. So most of the brands I work with are established brands.
Right.
And
Oh,
then,
of course. Yeah.
yeah. And then same thing with the startups. A lot of times startups are already, they've been funded, and in order to be that, they already have to have you know, a web presence. They're taking pre-orders, all those things. And you can see how much money they've spent on product development, on marketing, all these different opportunities to market themselves. And then they come at the end and they're like, oh, I need packaging, by the way.
Right.
So again, it's the same thing. It's like, well, this is this beautiful experience that you have. Here's the type of packaging that you're going to need to continue that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Cindy. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Evelio today? I know I could talk to you for hours, but I will not do that. I will not torture you like that. Yes.
Going back to materials, Evelio, when you mentioned like craft sheets with the brown craft being overused and really us having kind of a numbness to Amazon box after Amazon box, can you speak a little bit about other kinds of craft materials and colors and textures that you think would be effective?
I think just the brown craft itself, people are, you're right, they're just numb to it because they see it on their porch every day. But I think, you know, Chewy does a really wonderful job of, they do this huge blueprint and they knock out the Chewy logo. Chewy's a pet company. You know, they're doing something different with it, which is just, you know, a large flexo print to add some color to it. You know, creating custom tapes, I think, is another thing that can be done. You know, bright colored tape with, you know, bright colored paper adhesive. Oh, I can't remember what it's called. There's the paper reinforced tape. Ways that you can make your box stand out so that it doesn't look like everything else is important. Not that brown craft is bad. It's just that a lot of brands just default to that and they don't realize that they can do all these different things to it. You know, you can print a halftone pattern on it all over to create some kind of a texture. You know, you don't want to draw a lot of attention to it, so we don't have to worry about theft. But you want to draw enough attention to the outside of it that somebody receives it and they feel that they've purchased something special. You know, and I think with brown craft too, if you're working with corrugate converters, you know, can we add a texture to that liner? Can we add a finish to it? There's so many different things that can happen before it actually gets converted into boxes. That's important also. So you mentioned Lego's shipping boxes. I'm not familiar with those. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a fan, and I'm sure there's a few folks in the audience. They, you know, very intentionally provide very discreet packaging remarks. I think even to the point of there's nothing on the box itself other than the shipping label that identifies it coming from a point of origin from a Lego warehousing facility. And I was continuing a thought there. And I think it's as much to avoid, you know, there's sort of the holiday aspect of it, like inside of a family, right? So when something lands on the doorstep, kids or grown-ups even don't get, still have a surprise factor. But I think the other part of it is also to mitigate any kind of potential attraction for folks that want to divert the destination on that. And the other thought, I think, which is interesting on the flip side, is that some bicycle manufacturers will intentionally package their bikes with TV branding to make sure that in the shipping process it's treated much more delicately than it would be if it were just a standard undisclaimed object. So kind of in camouflaging the interior contents to help either be very discreet or to also change shipping practices as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with the bike example, what's cool about that is for the recipient, it's almost like you're in on the joke. So from a branding perspective, it's just a really good opportunity to create this bond with that consumer, because they know, obviously they know it's on a TV, and on the screens they've got somebody riding a bike. So it's like, it's kind of a cool way to connect with that consumer and let them in on the joke, which is kind of cool.
Hey, Evelio, just react to this. Antimicrobial coatings, flash in the pan or cultural change that will be with us for the long term?
You know, man, I think, I don't know, but I mean,
Neither do I, but that's why I'm asking.
no, I know, but it's like, that paper exists today
Mm-hmm.
in large quantities, but all the hospitals use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I worry that if we apply it to packaging without really considering the overall effects, we'll create a bigger issue. And if everybody all of a sudden chases down this trend, is it really going to make that big of a difference? Yeah.
Right. It's like, hey, this is antimicrobial. Like, oh, I wasn't thinking about that until you brought it up. Right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like if you hand someone something, here's your birthday present. By the way, it's antimicrobial. Like, oh.
Yeah. Although, I know there's like the silver coatings and stuff like that are antimicrobial, but chocolate, the nibs from the cocoa plant, like that has antimicrobial properties as well. It's kind of interesting to do like a chocolate coated paper. Why do we have to do silver? Why can't we do, chocolate?
I like the way you're thinking. Okay.
Let's do it, Chris. We'll partner. We'll do a chocolate paper.
We're on.
Evelio, I want to piggyback on kind of that COVID line of thought here for a second. So before this all hit, I started to notice a trend around subscription e-commerce, like Birchboxes of the world, actually suffering a bit, right? There were some layoffs, and I know that peaked a few years ago on the way down. Since I've been working from home, and I'm noticing a lot more of it start to pop up, as obviously retailers can't go to my local favorite store, can't go to the salon, and I was particularly tuned into a brand called Prose. I don't know if you've seen any of their. So I think it's a L'Oreal brand. I'm not 100%, but it is custom made hair care products. And so you fill out the questionnaire, they formulate shampoo, conditioner, other products based on your profile. The packaging is very much that minimalist packaging, like subtle colors, very, very, what I think is very on trend given some of the things I've seen. But I'm just curious if we're going to start to see a resurgence of that again, is maybe people are uncomfortable going out to stores, and how will brands try to customize that experience via, not necessarily even subscription, but e-commerce, and how do we, as the suppliers, or on this side of the supply chain, it's a lot to kind of keep up with in terms of like all of those like boxes and sizes and inserts, and how do we navigate that? Like, where do you see it increasing, and suggestions for best path forward?
Yeah, I think with e-com, I think brands like the Birch boxes and even with pros, you're going to start seeing, I believe that you're going to start seeing people creating more of this loop type of a system where, you use the product. If you're on a subscription, then, you return your pack and they can repurpose it. And if they're not thinking that and you're working with a brand, I think bringing that up as an opportunity is important. And as package designers, the earlier in the process we can involve ourselves, I think the better. So if we're looking at, a client that's using, X bottle, is there a better bottle for them to be using that will fit into a more modular insert system? And, just taking them back to the earlier design stages of the whole idea versus we have this product, we need you to come up with a box. It's like, let's do this let's look at this holistically. But I think that's the best way to move forward. And I really like the idea of what Loop is doing. And I see a lot of brands going down that path as well. Which means we've got to create returnable mailers, So I think that's the next big thing.
Great insight.
All right, guys. So I see we've got Chris from Mohawk Paper. You, Jill, are on the paper side. Is everybody here mostly on the paper side? I heard we had some people from Sappy as well. Is it mostly converters? Like, do we know what the breakdown is?
We should have had a question on that. I would say there's quite a bit of design online too that I can see. So it's a nice mix.
And agency people are on too, I noticed.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi there.
I think it's a good mix. It's probably more suppliers on this particular one, but a really good mix, I would say, of probably a third on the supply side, a third agency creative, brands, and then it might be high, maybe it's not quite a third, but printer, converter, like converted product manufacturer, if you will.
Sure.
I think that's kind of the breakdown.
Cool. Well, this is a great opportunity for converters, suppliers to reach out to the agencies and designers, and agencies and designers to reach out to suppliers and converters to have a Zoom where a converter can show you, this is the process, and really use this opportunity to educate people. People are at home and they want to learn more. We want to get out of our homes as much as possible, and doing it through Zoom is a great way to do it. So if you're not creating these types of Zoom classes for design agencies in your region that work in your space, I think you're really missing out. So I think it's something that is really important to do. And Jill, thank you for creating this. This has been a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know I speak for everybody. Like, this was amazing. Learned so much, taken an incredible amount of notes. I know I saw you writing, Terry. So you've given us a lot to really sink our teeth into, and hopefully go back and create some great tools for our customers, those brand owners, to be able to navigate packaging a little bit better. Will you go ahead and share your podcast again with us so we can all tune in?
Yeah, absolutely. It is Package Design Unboxed. It is available on Spotify at the moment. It'll be available on Apple iTunes here or Apple Podcasts in the next week or so. But Monday is episode 2 with Vincent Villager, who does a great job of kind of just going through his process of building luxury brands, followed by this gentleman named Bo out of Utah, who's on the recycling side. And he talks about how he has 40,000 pounds of a PET tray on his lot that he can't give away because pricing for plastic is just ridiculous. So it just kind of goes into what happens on the recycling side of the business, which is really, really interesting for package designers to know that the materials you're selecting are part of a longer supply chain, because it has to go to recyclers who actually have to sell it. If they can't sell it, it becomes waste.
Yep, materials matter. Wow, that's great. That's great. Definitely tuning in. And I just want to thank everybody for continually to show up weekly, turn on your screens. It has been the most fun I have had in a long time. We'll be back again next week. We are going to have a very special presentation with our very dear friend Danielle Dijon. And next week will be a brand new meeting link. So this week ends the recurring meeting that we had set up, but we will send out the recording tomorrow along with the link for next week's meetup. And as well as another really special presentation Millcraft is doing and we're making available for our Millcraft community. It is a really cool keynote speaker, John O'Leary, who I think his messaging will resonate with us all right now, very inspiring and kind of empowering. So I'll share more details in the email tomorrow with you on that. And I just want to thank you all for joining us. It's been fun. We'll see you next Thursday. Evelio, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Candace.
Why does this part always make me so sad?
I know.
It does.
Because our friends are leaving.
I know. We are social and it's crazy. All right. I'm gonna stop the recording.